Welcome to the Invite Health podcast, where our degreed healthcare professionals are excited to offer you the most important health and wellness information you need to make informed choices about your health. You can learn more about the products discussed in each of these episodes and all that Invite Health has to offer at www.invitehealth.com/podcast. First-time customers can use promo code podcast at checkout for an additional 15% off your first purchase. Let's get started.
As we grow older, there are many different things in the body that begin to change. One of those things happens to be the detoxification process that occurs each and every single day. So as we are growing older, we do want to make sure that we are maintaining proper metabolic detoxification. So I'm going to talk about that in specific details when it comes to foods. And specific foods, I want to talk about cruciferous vegetables today. This is something that has been shown time after time in terms of clinical research to be so advantageous when it comes to the way that the body is processing different harmful chemicals and hormonal byproducts that can be damaging at a cellular and systemic level. So I'm going to talk about that today and talk about where you can source your cruciferous vegetables from when it comes to whole food based as well as supplementation. I'm Amanda Williams, MD, MPH. So let's get right to it. Let's talk about cruciferous vegetables. The name itself is rather wordy, but when we break down the actual cruciferous vegetable family, we're looking at things such as broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, cauliflower, things that you know are healthy and beneficial for you. But there are other vegetables that fall into that cruciferous category, including things such as kale, rutabaga, for example. And I remember when I was little, my grandmother used to always make this rutabaga pie. And of course, as a little kid, you're always thinking that this is somehow going to be some sweet dessert, not realizing it was a vegetable based pie, but just always think of that whenever I hear the word rutabaga. But we can also look at turnips, watercress. We certainly know watercress is one thing that's been shown to be beneficial for the proper removal of chemical constituents that are known carcinogens, for example. So a lot of specific research on the group as a whole when we're looking at cruciferous vegetables. But when you start to extrapolate out the individual vegetables within that group, it's really very impressive. So let's take, for example, broccoli. And we know that broccoli has an enormous amount of what's known as glucophane. And the glucophane is really powerful when we think about the way that the body can cellular detoxify itself. And it also contains sulforaphane in it as well. So these are natural constituents that are derived from broccoli extract. But there are other different nutrients that come from your cruciferous vegetables. So not only are we looking at these chemical constituents that are very, very bioactive and beneficial for cellular detoxification, but we can also look at the full spectrum when we're thinking about vitamins and minerals. And we know that the vitamins and minerals that are derived from these cruciferous vegetables include other antioxidants. So things such as vitamin C, vitamin E. We know that the cruciferous vegetables oftentimes have a good amount of things such as folate in them and powerful carotenoids, on top of the fact that we know our vegetables are providing us with an excellent source of fiber, which helps everything in the body when we talk about blood glucose regulation, cholesterol regulation. So cruciferous vegetables, we should all recognize. Those are going to be healthy. Now, remember, it comes down to the preparedness of how you are actually making these vegetables. So steaming them or eating them raw is really the most advantageous way to obtain the full spectrum of all of those wonderful things that the cruciferous vegetables provide. If you are loading them down in butter and other different things that just kind of ruin the actual chemical constituents, then that's not really a good way to take in your cruciferous. Now, here's another little side note. Oftentimes, as people get older, and we know things are changing and our detoxification pathways slow down, but also our ability to break down certain cruciferous vegetables may start to shift. So when you're younger, in your 20s and 30s, you have no problem whatsoever when it comes to eating raw vegetables. So, say you're at a party and they have a platter full of vegetables and you're going ahead and you're eating the raw cauliflower and the raw broccoli, and you have no issue with that. But as you get older, you find that that's creating kind of an issue when it comes to digestion. Maybe you experience gassiness from this. Then you want to make sure that you are taking digestive enzymes that contain the active cellulase that help to break down the actual cellular component of those vegetables. So it's just a little tip. And we know that as we get older, our digestive enzyme production begins to go down. But as humans, we just don't make cellulase. So cellulase is required to break down the plant cellulose. And so with vegetables, sometimes people do struggle with the breaking down of that. So if you take a digestive enzyme such as digestive HX, that will nip that issue in the bud. But let's talk a little bit about the science behind all of these different cruciferous vegetables. So we know that broccoli is loaded down with all of these wonderful chemical constituents that help in terms of everyday metabolic detoxification. Now, metabolic detoxification happens each and every single day. This is the pathway by which the body is actually removing harmful chemicals. Now, these chemicals can be coming from a variety of different sources. They can be coming in from an external source, so say from prescription medications, say from certain foods that you're eating that are highly processed that contain an awful lot of chemicals that the body doesn't really know what to do with. There's other environmental factors certainly that can play a role. We can look at air pollution, things that the body has to contend with each and every single day. But we also know that there are chemicals that can build up in the body that the liver still has to be able to get rid of. So we can look at hormonal byproducts, for example, estrogen being the primary one that we would look at. So estrogen in and of itself, not an issue. But when you look at the estrogen byproducts, so as estrogen is breaking down in the body, this is where sometimes we can have these unwanted metabolites of estrogen. So what we know about the cruciferous vegetable family is that they're very targeted towards supporting that normal metabolic detoxification. There's 3 different phases, 3 essential steps when we're looking at how the body detoxifies itself. So oftentimes when people think about detoxification, you think that you need to do some type of wild, extravagant crash detox program. No, this isn't the case. What we need to do is support the normal process that is happening each and every single day. So there's phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And through this, we know that different nutrients, different compounds are activating those phases. So when we're looking at our vitamins, for example, if we have deficiencies in certain vitamins, this is going to interrupt phase 1 activity. We know certainly with mineral deficiencies, once again, that can disrupt phase 1 activity. And we don't want these things to happen because phase 1, the purpose of this is to chemically transform compounds, these harmful compounds, into more water-soluble compounds so that the body can better relieve itself of this. Then we get into phase 2. Now, the purpose of this is to further increase that water solubility. This is where a lot of those cruciferous vegetables come into play, is during phase 2. So the powerful sulforaphane that comes from broccoli, for example, this is really important during phase 2 detoxification. When we look at things such as indole-3-carbinol and DIM, these are both obtained from things such as cruciferous vegetables. Broccoli, cauliflower are relatively high in both I3C and DIM. So I3C is indole-3-carbinol, and then you have DIM. So these are both chemical constituents that are very, very powerful and very beneficial when we look at the phase 2 detoxification. So we have other natural things that are playing a role in this. We have Coenzyme Q10, for example, is playing a role in metabolic detoxification. All of our vitamins and minerals certainly are playing a role in metabolic detoxification, but we have to think about foods and how foods can really assist the body through this process. That's why we look at things like curcumin and green tea with that EGCG and resveratrol. We know all of these things. Garlic, for example, very beneficial in helping the body go through detox. Every single day, the body has to contend with all of this. We don't want to have these harmful chemicals building up, clogging up the liver, and creating a toxic body. So this is really an important process that happens. And we know that as we get older, sometimes this process can get delayed for a lot of different reasons. We can look at non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. We can look at certain medications that actually impede the proper functionality of detoxification because it's altering the way that the liver is working. So there's a lot of different factors, and for each person, it's going to be more on an individual basis. But what we do know is that, clearly we want to try and avoid toxins, which is why you want to try and not do processed food, try and do whole foods, do organic foods when possible, and make sure that we are incorporating, as we get older, these powerful constituents, things like indole-3-carbinol with DIM. And when you look at the science behind this, this is where it's absolutely amazing. And a lot of the research is in the setting of cancer research. So the Journal of Cell Biochemistry did a study where they were looking at the findings of indole-3-carbinol usage in breast cancer prevention. And this was done at the Strang Cancer Prevention Center in New York, where they took women who had an increased risk for breast cancer and they enrolled them into this placebo-controlled double-blind trial. And they were giving them indole-3-carbinol or they were given a placebo. And what their study found was that the indole-3-carbinol had this really wonderful effect in terms of having these chemopreventive properties to it when it came to breast cancer prevention. And then we can look at Karmanos Cancer Institute from Wayne State University, so in Detroit, where the Journal of Nutrition reported that indole-3-carbinol was shown to be incredibly effective in the setting of prostate cancer. And they said that epidemiological and dietary studies have revealed this association between a higher dietary intake of cruciferous vegetables and a decreased risk in prostate cancer. So in their study at the Karmanos Cancer Institute, that's what they did. They in vivo set up a controlled study where they were able to replicate and show how the indole-3-carbinol along with the DIM help to upregulate the expression of phase 1 and phase 2 enzymes, so for normal metabolic detoxification, showing that this increased capacity for the body to actually detoxify led to the inhibition of carcinogens. So really quite impressive. They said after doing this, this is a really novel breakthrough, and this can be used for devising novel therapies for prostate cancer. And they concluded that their results, their laboratory results, provide ample evidence of the benefit of indole-3-carbinol and DIM for the prevention and treatment of prostate cancer. This is so absolutely astonishing when you think about things coming from food. So your cruciferous vegetables have all of these powerful properties to it. The sulforaphanes, the indole-3-carbinol, the DIM, all things that we know that the body will easily utilize during phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification to make sure we can rid ourselves of these toxic compounds, of harmful byproducts that can lead to cellular stress and cellular dysfunction. So we have to always be cognizant of the way that the human body is actually working. And we can either be a helper to our body or we can be a hindrance to our body. So by incorporating I3C and DIM and starting to have higher amounts of these powerful cruciferous vegetables into your daily routine, think about how happy at that cellular level your body will be to be able to excrete out all of these toxins so they are not building up. And when people think about it in that regard, most people say, yeah, I'd rather be non-toxic as opposed to toxic. And we know that the body goes through these different phases each and every single day. So if there are things we can be doing to assist in that process and to promote healthy detoxification by simply adding in indole-3-carbinol, adding in cruciferous vegetables into our daily dietary intake, we should be doing that. So I will do another show where I talk about some more science on indole-3-carbinol and DIM, but I just wanted to give you a general overview of why cruciferous vegetables are so important. Don't be scared of incorporating them into your routine. Make sure that you add in things, bok choy, for example. You can look at adding in, as I mentioned, watercress, turnip, collard greens. These are all ways that you can get exposure to these powerful, active constituents that are coming from nature that can be so beneficial for those phases of metabolic detoxification. So I want to thank you so much for tuning in to the Invite Health podcast. Remember, you can find all of our episodes for free wherever you listen to podcasts, or by visiting invitehealth.com/podcast. Now, do make sure that you subscribe and you leave us a review. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Invite Health. And we will see you next time for another episode of the Invite Health podcast.